All right, on this episode of the podcast, we have Josh Sharpe, the president of the IFPA, and he comes on here talking about tournament pinball now that we're having sanctions come back. And we also talk about some things in the past, and we kind of talk about some other pinball related things because, of course, it's a pinball podcast. But I had a really fun conversation with him. He's always fun to talk to. So without further ado, Josh Sharpe. All right. Well, we're on, Josh. Welcome. You finally made it on after about a year of trying to get you on.
My wife let me out of the basement.
Yeah, I can tell. It seems that you're not at what is it, IFPA headquarters?
I mean,
right?
It's kind of like IFPA light headquarters. I mean, I offered you a replacement bottom part of your Oklahoma trophy. Would you like a top? We got those here.
I had a feeling that you might actually bring that up. So even though I didn't have it anywhere, I still brought it right here.
There it is.
Just as a reminder.
Unbelievable.
But I tell you, I love this thing.
Amateur hour, man.
Like, I'm not going to lie. I love this thing. Like, everybody's like, there were some people that contacted me. They're like, they're saying, why are you giving Josh Sharpe so much shit? Like, it's an honest mistake. I'm like,
I forgot that I had previously offered to send you a corrected one when I contacted you the second time.
Right.
But I saw it on one of your shows. I was like, fuck. I swear I offered to send him one that fixed it because our art guy will run extras every year or whatever, just as part of their setup. But I was like, I'll ask him again.
Well, the good thing is you did send the fix to it. I just love the original so damn much. I was not going to fix it. So technically I'm like the 2.5-time state champion now because I got 3 plaques. So I feel pretty accomplished by that.
I feel no more guilt over our amateur hour.
No, I wouldn't. That's probably, I don't know. Maybe if pinball keeps getting bigger, I might put that up on eBay.
Right.
That might be able to afford me some more pinball machines.
Next time you think about sanctioning your tournament with IFPA, check out their shoddy handiwork here.
Hey, it happens. But the thing is, though, IFPA's back, though, right? I mean, we're finally here after, what has it been, about 16, 18 months?
March 17th, man. So, yeah. 16 months.
Something like that. That's just
way
too, just way too long. But obviously, I mean, we don't have to get into it. We all know why that was. But the important thing is it's back. And you're obviously, we talked about this off podcast. You haven't lost any of your hair, which is perfect.
No, it's whiter now
hey,
than it was. But
I'm getting closer there with you.
Spending more time with my daughter the last 16 months to do that.
Isn't it the thing, though? That's the crazy part about kids, man. You love them so damn much. And then when you have something like this happen, you're around them 24 hours a day. You're like, okay, I brought you into this world. I'm dealing with it now. We're going to figure it out from here.
I feel like 20 years from now, it'll be a good memory of time. Like that year we spent every day together. So
yeah.
At some point it'll be a positive. Not yet. That day isn't today, but
it makes it to where every day is like a staycation, at least at first. And then that staycation lasted about a year. And it was no longer. Because it's one of those things.
Does it stop being a novelty after a year? 14? Where does the novelty at?
I don't know. Like, it scares me. Every time we go on vacation or we go to one of these pinball trips, I just know that it's going to be great the first, 4 days, 5 days. But you know how it goes. When you're around the same people, you start to get on each other's nerves. Your wife is taking, your clothes that's missing. She's taking the covers. Maybe I'm just complaining about my wife too much. But
yeah, a lot of similarities, man. A lot of similarities.
Oh, yeah. So basically take that 5 times, whatever it was that we were all at home. So there you go. Without the pinball tournament. So at least we're back. That's the important part. And so now, obviously, Adam Becker is the one that is approving all the tournaments, correct?
Yeah. He's busy,
so then he's making his pay right now.
He's really, his $0 an hour, he's now amortizing over many more events per day.
Yeah, it's funny because I always have people contact me, at least locally, that are putting in tournaments. And they're like, why is this not coming up immediately? Why is yours getting approved? Mine's not approved yet. And I tell them, I'm like, it's just, there's one guy in a dungeon up there in Canada that's approving them. Like, it'll take a little bit of time.
Some dude sent an email, following up to make sure we got it. And those are I get a lot of those. And I wrote him back and explained that, hey, because I can pull open, our back end and see that, like, search the director's name, and it's like, oh, there it is. It's like, it's in the queue. Don't worry. You're 489th in the queue. And he wrote back, I was like, yeah, man, as soon as I hit send on my email, I was talking with somebody else in my league, and they explained to me, I'm so sorry to even have asked, like, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, man, there's a lot of, I'm at a computer. I forget how many.
Well, I don't think people realize how many tournaments actually get put on and the actual amount of people that participate in tournaments. It's much higher, I believe, than what people realize.
So, like, even Adam, when was so Adam was an idiot in 2016 when we had the Papa World Championships and then the IFPA World Championships back to back in Pittsburgh, which is a memory I'll never forget. It was a great week. And I think at some point during, Papa was done, and then we were running IFPA, and Adam was just bullshitting with me and Zach and was like, hey, man, if you guys ever need any help, because I was like approving some, like, in between IFPA rounds, I was approving submissions, because any free moment, I was just like, approve stuff to get my email count down and whatever. He's like, I'm happy to help. I kind of have a pretty cushy job that, like, I can probably get most of it done during the day. And it was like, oh, yeah, man. Yeah.
You're hired.
So now
You're on.
Whatever. Back then, 2016, we had 3,500 events that year with total attendance of like 92,000. In 2019, it was 7,600 events with 174,000 of participation.
That's a lot.
It's like, it's more than doubled. And I'm sure there's moments you got to have Adam on. Maybe he'll be candid with you about how close he's been to shoving it back.
I can't imagine.
Whew.
He all of a sudden just decides to say F it, and he
Can't do
doesn't
it
tell
anymore,
anybody.
I'm out.
God.
I'm out, bro. See ya. It's like,
Oh my gosh.
Oh God.
So anybody out there that is considering running tournaments, keep that in mind. There is a considerable queue, and especially right now, I'm sure everybody's rushing to put up tournaments now. And so I'm sure there's always going to be a slight backlog that occurs naturally. And I mean, it'll all get done. I mean, there's not going to be any instance where somebody puts one out and it just gets overlooked. Like they'll
right now, like, fortunately, Adam hasn't had to deal with any results approvals, so it's all been calendar submissions. But like, those calendar submissions shift, and we have 1,571 tournaments waiting on results right now. So at some point, it's like the cadence of people submitting new events doesn't stop, but then this avalanche of like results come through, and that's where, like, Adam will tell me not to talk to him.
That's where it just gets crazy. Well, that's why I wonder, is there people back from March still waiting to put in results? I mean, is that even worth people putting in results?
The things that people like, leagues especially, right? Because tournaments are just, they happen or they don't happen.
Right.
Leagues are seasons that last whatever, some amount of time. So a bunch of leagues decided to, like, hey, we were through 3 out of 7 sessions. Can we just submit our results from 3 sessions that through March of 2020? Yeah. And it was like, sure, yeah, I'll change your end date to when was the last date of your last session you were able to play. Go in, edit their tournament date, then they can submit. But there's been a bunch that are like, we're picking up, we have session 4, August 7th. And it's like, okay, well, what's your new end date? And it's like, it's November 11th. And it's like, okay, so update their event. And now it's back to like an in progress league.
Really? Well, I didn't even consider that. I just figured some people would just go ahead and just say, okay.
And others don't. Like, our league just dumped the season. Our 2020 season will just, I think we were 2 sessions in because we started in January and we did not do March. And it was like, we were talking about picking it up now, but our season's normally January to July. And it's like, now we're starting in August and we end to avoid all the holidays at the tail end of the year. And it's like, we're just punting. And,
right.
And it's like, that never happened.
Yeah, I think that's basically all anybody can really do right now. But hey, just like we're talking about, it's great that tournament pinball is coming back. But of course, I'd be remiss not to mention that obviously it was just less than a week ago now we found out that the Museum of Pinball is no more, which obviously that's where a major tournament's at with the Open that's ran by Carl D'Angelo and Bob Matthews and Jim Bilcito and lots of other people all around there. So seeing kind of what's happening there, and then also with what's happened with Pinburg, and then of course Papa, you're seeing these large tournaments that are either folding, or Indisc obviously, or the Open hasn't folded. They're still looking around, so it's still good to go. But obviously there's a little bit of a upheaval and a little bit changing of the landscape. I mean, what are your thoughts on that moving forward in terms of tournament pinball coming back and making sure that there's still enough big tournaments around to be considered majors moving forward?
I think there's a difference between a big tournament, participation wise, and I guess a prestigious tournament.
Right.
Like the closed world championship we run is 64 players. There's many events around the world that are more than 64 players, but what it means to qualify for ours means something in the world. And I think, like, I have played before Papa came back in 04, the team, Kevin and his team were running it's confusing. They were running Pinburg, which is what they called their version of Papa from 99 to 03 before they took over the name. Like, we were playing in a hotel conference room.
Yep.
That was like, probably smaller than your setup over there. It was like 20 games down one wall, and that was it. But the importance of that event and the high caliber players that showed up, like, that was the shit, man. Like that was the tournament to win. So I think, Carl and Jim and Bob, like, they'll figure out a solution. And I mean, we have held IFPA in some weird ass places. We held it on like a working farm in London that you literally could go like play with livestock in between rounds if you want.
I've heard about that. What tournament was that? Because I've heard this mentioned.
That was IFPA 6 in
really
London.
So this is a world championship event. That is badass. Pinball has come a long ways, although now it's kind of circled back to where you almost have to go back to that for the nostalgia, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of competitive pinball, if you get a group of the best players in the world and put them anywhere with a game in it, it's on.
Yep.
So was the Pinburg stage nice? Like, hell, of course it was nice. It was unbelievable. It's going to be really hard to replicate that because of the resources you need to do that. But of
course, yeah.
I've joked with the Papa guys a bunch. Like, hey man, you just let me know what the dates are and I'll reserve at the Best Western down the street where you guys used to hold this much smaller event. Like, let's take it back to basics, man. I'll be there. Raise the entry fee. Let's get saucy. Let's go.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you actually, so what you just said right there, it's pretty interesting because I've had this conversation with a few other players that are world class, much better than myself, that have actually won Pinburg events or other events. And one of the things about it that we've been talking back and forth about is we were wondering if there's potential out there for higher caliber tournaments in terms of either payouts, which would eventually mean that your entry fee has to be much higher than what we're used to. And I remember there was actually a conversation about this, I believe over on Tilt forums. It was probably well over a year ago now, to where people were trying to figure out what would the value be to get somebody to travel for. And so, I mean, what are your thoughts on potentially seeing tournaments out there that could be $250 entry fee or even $500 entry fee?
I mean, our world championship's $250. And
right.
I think when you take into consideration all the travel costs associated with going, I mean, I told the Papa crew, like, I'd pay $1,000 for Pinburg because it would be the cheapest part of my trip,
Yep,
between
absolutely.
airfare and Ubering and hotel and whatever. Like, I'm less concerned about that. I think the local people are the people that are usually the vocal, like, what the fuck? Like, that's so much money. And it's like, yeah, because you're sleeping in your house and you're like going home for meals. So it's like, it literally feels like $500 out of your pocket.
Yep.
And for me, it's like, and for most other people, it's a vacation. So it's a vacation where, I can have a good weekend and pay for it through my play, which is, most other vacations when I go to Disney, I have no opportunity to pay for that trip.
Right.
There's no big
tournaments going on.
Whipping out the
Disney.
credit card over and over again.
Yeah.
But I think the high stakes, big prize pools, the problem there is you need a bunch of people that aren't going to win to support that prize pool, right? So at some point, like running the Power 100, that I do, that it's $100, and the entry fee worked in a way where you could pay as much as 500 if you wanted to side pot bet up to $500. And it's like, well, fuck, man, I don't want to do that, because it's like, there's Elwin and there's Raymond. And it's like, yeah, man, that's, it's not about like, man, if I just set up an event with $1,000 ahead, it'd be huge. And it's like, would it? Because you got to be willing to lose it in order to do it. And the number of players, like, I'd be in, but the number of players that I think would be into it, you just, as you raise the entry fee, you get a smaller and smaller group that's like, yeah, I'm probably going to lose. And I don't really want to lose that much money.
Yeah, one of the formats that I think would go over really well would be almost like a heads up format, to where maybe you just have 16 people show up, or 24 people, whatever you want to have. But if it's just heads up, whether it's 5 games, 7, or even go all the way up to 9, but I feel like something like that could potentially be a pretty big event with a larger fee, because I kind of think of it almost like World Series of Poker type, to where you have different events and everything. So I almost feel like, I always thought that some of these large Stern Pro Circuit events would do well if they would hold something like that the day before, where it's just like, maybe it's an invite only for the players that are ranked a certain amount, or maybe it's just open season.
But again, who's subsidizing it, right? If it's coming out of the players' pockets, I mean, at some point, you probably have some world class. I mean, people were coming to Expo and avoiding my house for the Power 100 because it was like, yeah, man. I mean, like that sounds fun and all, but I don't want to just throw out $100 because their confidence level against other people is just
and see, that's like, for me personally, because I come from a baseball background, so the reason why I like to play pinball is it is fun, but it's competitive too. Like, I love the competitive element. For me, that makes it even more fun, because you can only go so far playing by yourself on a pin and then trying for a high score. Eventually you want to test yourself against other players that are either just as good or, quite frankly, better than you. Like, I want to be the worst one in the room and see, how much better I can get.
That's how I grew up, man. After I stopped playing in juniors events in 95, like, I didn't win anything kind of important for until I think I won pinball at the zoo in 01. It was like those 6 years of just getting my ass just pounded by Lyman and Elwin and all those guys. And it's like, they would look at the bracket. It's like, oh, nice, I got a Sharpe brother, time to like just kill him.
Oh yeah, it's so funny story. I kind of getting off the beat, and I'll bring us back around. And of course, I was giving you shit before down in Florida about the Power 100 and all that, because I went in on that and I just tanked myself. And so luckily now it took a pandemic, but now I have 18 months that just kind of wiped away from there. But yeah, because I would love to play in that tournament and just have a chance. But funny story back with Florida, I think it was during finals. I won't name the name, but we were playing and there was another game going on and somebody had made a comeback, right? Well, this player that was watching it would directly affect whose group they were in and not in. And so what it did, it pulled that player. They were visibly mad and I could hear them cussing and they're right next to me. And I realized right off the bat, they were mad because they weren't coming into my group next round.
The dead money group.
Yeah, exactly.
Give me the dead money, man.
Exactly. So I was like, yeah. I was like, I got some work to do, because obviously we all want to be that type of player that's like, okay, we're the shit. Everybody's going to avoid us.
Go.
But I realize, I can self-admit, I realize I still have a ways to go to catch up to people. I mean, yeah, it's great being a local champion, whatever you want to say, but I thoroughly enjoy going out to these national level events and playing against competition like that, because I feel like you're always learning something, like even something that you take as an absolute, like, this is how you play this game because I've seen a tutorial on YouTube or I've watched other people play it. And then you see one of these young kids come around and they do something totally different on a rule set that's existed for years now. And you kind of see something different. You're like, okay, that's the way I do it. So I think that's the most exciting part about tournaments coming back. I think a lot of us have been able to sit back and just either play a lot or be able to watch a lot of video, consume a lot of content, and kind of see, what's going on from there.
For me, the rush has always been like, and I play a lot of golf. It's like just the competitiveness of needing to perform at a very specific time, like the anxiety that comes with that, and the adrenaline management that comes with that, like that's my jam, man. Like that's the biggest part of what I missed over the last year and a half. Like I turned all my extra balls on at home and did some Carl Wizard mode chasing, and over the last year, like Zach and I both got through what we needed to in our games, and that was fun, and it was a unique challenge for the time. But like, I'd way rather have Zach come over and let's just play a best of 5, and like, I don't need $1 billion on Walking Dead. I need 35 million, but I need it right now on this last ball, and I'm under 2 million. What do you do? Like, go.
Yeah.
The situational play, man, is what it's all about.
Yeah, and you actually had one of the most unique situational play situations that happened, and this happened at the Louisville Arcade Expo in 2014.
Oh, is this the slide?
On a little game called Congo.
Yeah.
And you had one of the most craziest slide saves. It's not
one
of the most
debounce management, man.
Oh my gosh! So for those that have no idea what I'm talking about, just look up I think it's on pinballvideos.com, and you can find Josh Sharpe. It's under Congo for 2014, and it was. I will just go ahead and say it's the most incredible save in pinball I've seen. I know some people see. I think it was Bowen's save on Adam's Family up at Papa, but this is just insane. You took the damn pin clear out of camera view nearly, held onto the ball.
Put it back.
Yeah. Then you adjusted the camera. I mean,
always important for the kids, man.
So what was the adrenaline spike there where you're just, I mean, because it's an important game, you're saving the ball and you do something like that and you survive it.
I mean, I don't know if you like subtle movement. I mean, it's just debounce work, right? Yep. Like the tilt bob will only register a warning whether you barely touch the ring or it fucking, bashes around in there for some length of time. So if you're going to use, I don't know if what podcast Colin McAlpine was talking about it, where, through nudging, you can add balls in play. And especially in competitive pinball where there's no extras, it's like, if you turn a 3-ball game into a 4-ball game, like that's insane. Think about, like, I don't know, you're playing a baseball game and it's like, hey, home team, you guys get 12 innings today. Yeah, we do. This is the jam. Like, so, being able on those Williams games are great. You can do it on a lot of Williams games depending on the programmer, but like the debounce there gives a lot of room for it to go 1 warning. Let me make sure that's clear before I give the 2nd warning. Let me make sure that is clear before I give, the tilts, that you can be aggressive at no warnings and ultimately be in a situation where, like, if I tilt, it's fine. Like it's because you're evaluating, like, how much bonus would I have lost? I think it was pretty early on in the ball that, like, I would, 10 million in bonus. It's like, if I had, 350 million waiting for me in bonus, at that point I'm playing with fingertips and you're not going to see me slide anything anywhere.
Right.
So you're kind of managing that situation.
Then what do you think then? Because there definitely in this past year, there's actually been a lot more people entering pinball in terms of they're looking at playing in tournaments. They've gotten into the hobby. They're buying a lot more. What would you say for aspiring players that I think a lot of people think you have to have just an encyclopedic type knowledge of the rules, when I believe that in competition you really don't need to know that. You just need to know the basics. You need to know what to do with the basics.
I like your 3M approach, man. It's pretty good. I wouldn't put it on a t-shirt, but I'd talk about it.
Hey, we need to put it on a t-shirt. That's a great idea now. but like, wouldn't you
that's how I feel. Like, I haven't played anything new. Like, if I had I got an Avengers, so I know how to play that now, but if I had to go play a Zeppelin or Turtles, like, and this is, I mean, growing up in the 90s, the big tournaments would always be the latest game that just came out. You would be learning what to do in the qualifying line, talking to other players. It's like, hey, man, what'd you learn? And it's like, I learned if you do this and then do this, it'll stack. And it's like, oh my God, really? Okay, I'll start doing that. Like, that was part of the fun and enjoyment. Like, Zach, it was a fun weekend when by the end, Zach and I would be like, all right, I know how to play that game now for future tournaments because I just spent this weekend learning, what to do. Yeah. So and it's a few things, man. And mostly it's about where are their pain points for game exploitation, right?
Yep, that's a big part of it. And also, too, I tell a lot of people that, and that's why I was glad that you mentioned Colin, because I even told him after I heard that, I was like, dude, this is like something that a lot of people need to know, because I feel like people, they underestimate the value of actually nudging and moving a pin.
It's intimidating. It's intimidating.
Yep. And I just feel like that right there. I know you hear a lot of people talk about the first skill you need to develop is don't flip, learn to control this and that. But I feel like nudging, if you can get somebody that's an aspiring player that wants to play competitive, I feel like that's the number one skill right there that will help you. If you can get your recovery skills down and you can do that, I feel like you can go a lot further than with any other skill early on.
If you're not accurate like me, you need recovery skills, or else you're
yeah, exactly. But hey, if you never miss, you don't have to worry about it, right?
I wish it was that easy for me, man.
Who is the most accurate player that you've seen before? Like, I've heard people, I could have swore I heard
Daniele, probably.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I thought I heard Robert Gagno say that he thought Yorian, because I was watching a documentary just the other day.
Yeah.
But I've never seen Yorian play in person. I've just seen the videos.
Yeah.
He's good, say, where's he been? Like, I thought he was supposed to be
Him and I have joked. He had some kids, and his wife is a lot like my wife. Doesn't let him out a whole bunch anymore.
Oh, gosh. Yep. No wonder. That'll do it. See, I guess I got lucky. As soon as I started having kids, my wife was begging me, like, we got to get out of here. We got to go to different places and see things.
That is not my life, brother.
So then, kind of touching base and leaning into this just competitive a little bit more. What are your thoughts exactly on where competitive pinball is going to go? Like, say 5 years from now, 10 years from now that we've kind of talked about some of the majors that are coming and going, and obviously lots of people are wanting to play competitive pinball now, but what are your thoughts on the overall growth of that moving forward?
I think I was just running some stats for Chicago Gaming, had some questions for me about like the IFPA's player base and age, and I ended up sending it to Zach on the Stern side because it was kind of interesting. But like, it's not great. It's not great. Like, you see, they had me run some stats of like, what was the player base 10 years ago? What was the player base age demo 5 years ago? What is it today? And there is very clearly a line of people that found pinball in that 90s boom, which I was a part of. I was a teenager during that time, but you can probably stretch down to, I'm 41 now. But so people were probably as young as, if you're in the mid 30s, you probably had some experience of that 90s arcade boom before that disappeared. And you can see like 10 years ago, that age group was 25 to 35, and then now it's 35 to 40. Like, the demographic that is into competitive pinball is moving with age.
Right.
And I was a little disappointed. I was telling Zach, because we've done a lot of work with Stern on the Stern Army campaign, and trying to get these barcades, like getting events in these barcades to try to lure new people. And I would have expected that. We have one of our age brackets was 18 to 29, and it was just way lower than I thought. Like depressingly lower than I thought. Like, really? I really like I'm like, this is what the Stern Army campaign's all about, man. We've been doing this for like 5 years. So, and then you filter out the numbers, and it's like, fuck, like, where are all the 18 to 29 year olds? Where are you?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I have a working theory that I feel like if some of these manufacturers would actually reach out to college campuses in terms of their student union and look at donating a pinball machine to large campuses that are around places that already have a larger player base, like a Chicago or like somewhere out in California.
The big problem there is who's going to maintain the game, Travis.
Well, that's the key. That's the other part I was going to say. Like, the logistics of everything is just
don't work, man.
No, it's incredibly tough, and that's the thing. That's why I've talked to several people about that, and that's the difference. That a lot of people wonder how esports has boomed, but pinball hasn't kind of gone on that trajectory. And what I tell everybody is, well, esports is much easier to get into. To be able to get a PlayStation, a PC, or an Xbox in your room is a lot easier than this. It's not easy to get this, regardless. For us that are already in pinball, we may think it's easy because we're used to it. But then we all remember the very first pinball machine we got. It's not the barrier of entry into pinball.
And don't get me wrong, like, I was slightly disappointed at just that age demo, but like the the number of players by year, like we're adding new, like when 5 years ago, let's say 2014, we had 13,000 unique players that played in at least one sanctioned event. 2019 was 24,000 unique players. 2020 for the first 3 months, 11,000 unique players. So like it's growing. It's just I think we're still reaching people that had a familiarity with pinball at some previous point in their lives. We're not finding as many people like, what is this big piece of wood? What do these buttons do? It's like you're bringing people that are like, oh man, I remember that. I think I played like high speed in college or whatever, some version of that. And it's like, you can play. I mean, there's so many people that I know that were like, I knew a pinball, but I didn't know there were like tournaments and leagues and stuff that like you're just providing a different way for someone to enjoy a game they were already familiar with. And that's fine. Like, I'm happy to grow the player base that way with a group of people that are familiar. I think, the bigger growth would be, sort of leaning on your esports angle is people like Zen Studios and like Farsight putting in a push for people to do. It's a lot easier to get, hey, Keith Owen, what do you think of video pinball? Like, I think it's a piece of shit. Zen's giving out $1 million to the person that wins this video pinball tournament. Where's my iPad? Where's my let's go. I can play. Like, what's it on? It's on their recreation of AC/DC. Okay, like I know the game rules. Like, I will learn how to play this device and make it work. Like, I feel like that because I know plenty of people that have gotten into competitive pinball through like playing the Farsight Pinball Arcade, and then realize like I realized like I was playing Funhouse and I Googled Funhouse and it was a real game. Like, they didn't just make this up. It's like a real thing. And then, you do your little deep dive and then I meet someone who like, a year ago, I thought Funhouse was made by Farsight. And here they are a year later and they traveled down the rabbit hole, man.
Yeah. And then you come out of that and all of a sudden you see there's several hundred different types of pinball machines out there.
The player retention is great. Like once you fall in love with pinball and pinball as a sport, you very rarely fall out of it. I mean, the number of people that I know from the early 90s that I met when I started playing, most of them are still out there, man.
Yeah, and that's the key part. And I know there's of course a lot of people out there that, I say a lot, there's some people out there that believe that pinball might within 10, 15, 20 years, for whatever reason, might go by the wayside. But to me,
no way.
Yeah, I was just like, I've got 4 kids and they're all involved in pinball. You've got kids. I'm sure they play a little bit. And just because they don't participate in tournaments or do anything like that, they're still playing. I mean, it's both my sons, they play sometimes, but they both have said, we want pinball machines in the future in our house. Like, so I feel like there's still a lot of people that are playing pinball, and there's a huge group of people out there that play pinball that don't participate in tournaments at all. I think a lot of people would be shocked how many people there are. I mean, probably at least 75 to 80% of the correspondence I get just from the YouTube channel, from the podcast, are people that don't even play in tournaments. They've never played in one. They just collect, and at least half of them are brand new, just as of 2020.
And I think you weren't around in the early aughts when, the 90s tournament seed was heavily, like, it was all new games because it was all manufacturer supported and there were 5, 6 manufacturers. Like, when the 2000s hit and everyone went out of business and Gary was putting out, 2 or 3 new games a year, it was like all these tournaments that we played at was always the latest and greatest machines. There was no thought about like playing a Paragon in a tournament. It just didn't exist. Like classic type events and using old games really wasn't a thing. So I've always believed, and I know my dad has always believed, that like, even if new pinball didn't exist, pinball would still live on, just with the back catalog of equipment that's been made. There's some period post new games where 100 years, if there was no new games, would stuff die out? Like, yeah, sure, you take everything's gonna die. That's like the inevitable end of everything.
Right.
But like, we proved in the 2000s that like, leaning on collectors at shows and deciding that it didn't have to be just the latest and greatest games in a tournament environment, and it opened up a whole new world to be able to compete on stuff. It's like you competed on like a Monopoly when that came out, and then like the following year, it's like you never played Monopoly in tournament again because Roller Coaster Tycoon was out and that was the game to play. And I much prefer this version of competitive pinball where kind of all games are up for grabs.
Yeah, that's for me, that's the most fun part is even if you have a classics tournament or a modern, I love the tournaments that mixes everything to
There's
where you
different
have,
skill sets, man. It's awesome
yeah,
to that was part of our world championship design in 2006 was and the Europeans tended to be people that if a game was made before high speed, you shouldn't even call it pinball. It's something else. Like I don't
yeah,
know what the word is, but it's not pinball.
yeah,
It's something. And you know, we're big believers in like, you know, instead of complaining that it's not pinball, maybe you should, I don't know, accumulate the skills that are required for those kind of games because they're really different.
yeah.
You know, learning to tap pass isn't something you need to worry about if you're playing high speed and newer. It's a nice skill to have in the toolbox if you're playing, you know, some older stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the funniest part about it is that I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that view classics. You hear it all the time about EMs being luck boxes. And, you know, facing facts, there are some EMs out there that do qualify under that. At least I would say they would. The 2.5-inch flippers would just maybe some scoops out there, some saucers out there to where you might hit one, you might
I
not.
tell you what, if you want to go up against Elwin 100 times, I'll put my money that somehow in this luck box, he'll beat you 51 times.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. But the reality is that when you get exceptional players on these pins, they will figure it out. There's a reason why you see those names. That's the key. Yeah, it's funny. Keith is he's unique character for sure. Like it cracks me up every time I talk to him. You know, I might get a couple of word answers out of him, you know, but I can tell his mind is always, when you ask him a pinball question though, I can tell immediately. It's like he just clicks over, and I mean, it's like talking to the Terminator with pinball. He just knows. And that's why to me, I was just telling him the other day that we are so damn lucky to have somebody like him in pinball that is designing the pins that he has coming out. I mean, can you imagine a situation in which we don't get Elwin pins, or a situation to where even Stern isn't around at the way that they are? I mean, it's just like you were talking about with all the newest games that were coming out at the clip that they were back in the 90s. I think a lot of people don't realize that was the case back then compared to what it could be like it was in the early 2000s, you know? So to me, it's just, I'm glad to see where pinball is going terms of, I think it is for sure. Now, a big part of me, I kind of want to see somebody take a chance and do something more of the classical nature in terms of maybe more like the way a solid state would look. But unfortunately, I don't know if manufacturing capabilities would even allow that, if economies of scale would even allow that nowadays.
I mean, you know, whether it's comments like that or comments on theme, right? That's the other big thing that gets talked about is, you know, the dad rock and what it like why are these companies not trying things? And it's like it's expensive to try things. You know, we've tried things at Raw Thrills that we've thrown in the garbage, and it's like, you know, it'd be nice is, I don't know, having that $2 million back in our bank account rather than having tried this. So it's like, what are we doing now? We're going to make our next driving game because that's what we do well. And it's like at some point, you know, you just need to evaluate where, and all these businesses do, like where they are in their business that they can take a chance. And it's hard, man, because taking a chance and it not paying out, there's a long period of time to have to recover from that before you get back on the highway. And you're like, all right, we're back on the highway. We're back doing 75 and everything's great. But like, yeah, man, we fell in the ditch back there and got a toe out and replaced 2 tires. And, you know, it's all that costs real money. And there's always someone at the top that's paying the bills, man.
Yeah, and that's actually what one of my business mentors told me a long time ago, that you have to earn the chance to take a chance. Like you have to earn that, because it's almost one of those weird things to where early on you will take chances if you're at the very beginning, because you have to build that nut up. You have to get something going. You have to get that snowball going downhill. But then eventually, if what you know is working and what you know is consistent, then it almost becomes difficult to get away from what's consistent to go into the unknown. And like you said, you could crash and burn going into the unknown. And then you're left with, well, what was the point of doing that when I could have been consistent with XYZ? So
and paying attention, you know, if you're talking to 500 people about pinball, it's important to recognize like there's the age demographic of those who play, and there's the age demographic of those who buy. And
Yep.
for everyone, you know, you read on Pinside and it's like, fuck man, I'm not buying that thing. And it's like 9 times out of 10, they weren't buying it anyway. So it doesn't like, it doesn't stop them from complaining that like somehow Stern did X with this or JJP did Y with this. And now it's like, and now for that reason, I'm out. It's like, okay, Shark Tank guy, you were out anyway. Like you weren't trying to find a reason to be in. You were just vocalizing some particular reason why you were out. So, you know, I think all the manufacturers are doing what they can to sell games. And I think if you see someone like where I think it's exciting in like the hobby part of the industry is you see someone like Scott, you know, build TNA from nothing. And it's like, and see, you know, whether it's like Ryan McQuaid with Sonic, like what hobbyists are able to do now is like, it's insane, man. They like they can build up something that's like genuinely like a real thing. And if there's a way to harness that energy and make something that, you know, you could kind of test with the world, would there be interest and get enough pre-sales to make it worth someone's time? I think that's how you can sneak in some of this change. And you see something like a TNA come out and it's like, will there be a company that makes a TNA like game, you know, single level game? Maybe.
Yeah.
It could.
Yeah, it's funny. The way that I buy pinball machines is probably much different than the normal person. It's like I have my themes that I love. Obviously, I love Avengers, love Walking Dead, but I've purchased other pinball machines before just because for me, pinball's fun. If the layout looks fun or if the rule set looks fun, I want to play it regardless of the theme. Like I just want a chance to flip it, and then obviously if I can move it, if I can sell it, that's fine with me. But I got a feeling, I could have swore I've heard you say on another podcast before that theme really doesn't play too much into your own buying decisions.
I'm not a big, I mean, what do I have? Like I have a Dracula and that movie's fine. I don't like Iron Maiden, the band. I don't like Metallica, the band. I didn't like AC/DC, but now I really do from the game. I've learned to appreciate their music. But like, yeah, man, for me, it's like, did Elwin make it? Is Lyman on it? Like those two guys, it's like, they kind of know how to make stuff that is fun for me. So regardless of the theme, you know, when Elwin makes Golden Girls, man, I'm in.
Yeah. And that's one of the funniest parts with the way that how good Elwin is at doing what he does. It's almost as if Stern doesn't have to necessarily worry too much about the theme that he's on in terms of getting whatever sales that they want to get out there. Now, obviously, if you're putting pins on location, not too many people are going to know who the designer or who the rule set person is. They just see the theme.
I would dare say there's a business argument to that of like, you give him the worst, like he's kind of shit out of luck, man. Sorry, dude, you're the brand. So therefore you get all of these shit licenses because we need the games that are objectively worse to have better themes so we can move product.
Yep. That's the debate we were having. And I actually agree with that. And I know if he listens back to this, he's going to be like, oh no, like F that. Like,
sorry,
there's
man.
no way.
Sorry, Keith. You're getting shit forever. Don't ever work for me. I won't give you any licenses that you want. I'm going to give you all the shit.
I feel like he's one of the few people in pinball that could do something unlicensed and it would still compete pound for pound with sales with most of the titles that are out today.
Yeah, that's a stretch, Travis.
Like I think it could. I think it could.
I think you get the Elwin fanboys and fangirls, no problem. But like, there's still.
Do you think there would be Do you think there would be 1,000 Elwin fanboys out there that would pay $15,000 for a Super LE Elwin pin?
No.
You think there'd be 2,000 then?
No.
See, I'm just going to go higher. No. You never know. I used to think that there wouldn't be that many people out there for that. But then when I see pinball prices going where they're going, it's making me wonder, is just the same small pond that are increasing these prices?
Yes.
Or is it new people that just don't know any better? Like, is there just a bunch of rich people out there just spending money like it doesn't mean anything? It's a little bit of everything, isn't it?
Yeah, man. There is a particular collector group that is hitting an age in their life with disposable income, call it mid 40s to mid 50s right now, that, have more often than not, that demographic is geekier in nature. If you're a games person, that you probably don't have a strong like drug or alcohol problem or something, or other vices that are using that disposable income, that if you're smart and have a decent job and have some money to spend, it's not that expensive of a toy for someone who it's like that's their only vice, right? Like
Right.
it's like, what's your car? I drive a Corolla. It's like, well, dude, you have like 200 grand worth of games in your basement. It's like, yeah, no, I know. It's like, what's your house worth? About 175. So you're telling me your games are worth more than your house? Yeah, no, that's right.
See, it's hilarious you're saying that, because I know several of those people around. It's surreal when you go into a house, and I've done this before, to where I've gone places with friends, because they're like, oh, so and so has just this badass collection, and we're going to a place, and I'm like, are we going to get robbed getting out of our car? Where are we? Then all of a sudden there's $200,000 worth of pinball machines just sitting there. I mean, that's what amazes me about Tom Graff's place. Now, he doesn't live in the ghetto or anything like that. He lives in a nice place.
He's gonna listen. You better prepare for your next triple drain, man.
Oh yeah, no,
for you.
Oh gosh, yeah. Tom is a superstar on there.
Right.
Let me tell you. But yeah, he has one of the most amazing collections that I've ever seen, just because it's like LE, and then he has all the badass old school games like Creature, Addams Family, Frontier. I mean, so stuff like that.
The guys who do it right, and I'm pretty terrible at this, although I did just sell like 6 games during the pandemic, is if you're able to turn it over, like, I mean, I was selling games that I had bought in like the 2000s for whatever, pennies on the dollar now.
Right.
That like, I bought a Fishtails from an operator that was beat to shit for $500 and like sold it for $3,000. Like, if you're turning that over, like, I have a pretty nice collection that I kind of don't have any real money into, because I've sold 60 games over the last however many years. And it's like, it's the little profit wins where you sell, 5 games and you just afforded, your Walking Dead is now free, based off of turning those other 5 games over. So
yeah, that would be nice. I mean, unfortunately, when I got into pinball, there was no.
You're too late, man.
Yeah, there's no $500.
Back in the day, man, the Craigslist huntings, there was some good stuff out there.
Oh, I saw somebody post on Facebook. It was a page from an amusement coin book or something like that. Yeah, did you see that? Where it was, there was some game on there. I think it was like T3. Was worth more than or was priced higher than a Circus Voltaire, or than like a Lord of the Rings.
In college, the Williams was closing out No Good Gophers and Circus Voltaire, and I had one of my buddies down there was like looking for a game for his apartment, and like Twilight Zone was his favorite. So he had talked with a local operator there about, and they had a Twilight in stock, and it was like $1,200, and it was like, dude, you're crazy. Because my dad called and was like, hey, do you or Zach or anyone, I can get circuses and gophers $800 new in the box. Do you want one? And I'm like, no. Like, well, no. What do I do with those things? Like, no, $800. Like, no. What do you pay, Dad? When you get, you pay like $100. You have to pay like the delivery fee. They're free. $800 is terrible. And but I asked my friend, it's like, hey, Gophers was whatever, a Pat Lawler game. And it's like, hey, man, do you want his new game? At the time, it was his new game. Do you want his new game for $800? Like, my dad can just get it for you. And it's like, no, I'll take this busted ass Routed Twilight for $1,200 instead. And it's like, man, good luck to you, bro. And it's like, he probably still has it. But it's like, back then, the pricing, what pricing is now is insane.
Yeah, and it's funny. It's kind of hard unless you know somebody that was around that era. It's kind of hard just to describe it, because just like what you described there, I'm sure I've heard it from several other people, to where they're finding stuff at garage sales back then for less than $500 or $250.
Zach's first game was a Cybernaut for $50 in 2000 whatever, and it was not working. It was a fuse. It was like one fuse and it powered up, and he had his first game for $50.
See, we've only ran into that one time ever. I have a big hit, I think it's Gottlieb downstairs, that my wife picked up for $100, And the guy was like, yeah, it doesn't work. It's not doing anything. And it was literally just one fuse. And it was good to
Paintball
go.
Deluxe was like that too. I've had a couple where it was like, it was just a fuse. Hey.
I don't know if we can
It's
get those
always
fines
just
anymore.
a fuse, but sometimes it actually is.
Sometimes it is. Other times when you go visit somebody to where you see the pictures and then you show up and it looks nothing like the pictures. It's like you're getting catfish, but with pinball. Yeah, that's so glorious. All right. Well, I got a couple of more questions real quick. I know I told you before. Like I wasn't going to do interview, but I had to get these out because I need to know. I need to know.
Go ahead.
So I think you mentioned before IFPA, the World Championships are going to be next May. Correct.
Sounds right.
So we're just getting our timeline back here because I know a lot of people want to know.
My T-shirt that I received just as the pandemic hit, it'll be pretty close to only having one number that's incorrect on it. The 2020, it'll be 2022.
Well, there you go. Hey, that'll be a collector's edition.
That's right.
That's all that matters, right? So, okay, so then if IFPA 17 is going to be in May, that means IFPA 18 would be the following May, right? We're correct.
Following,
we're right.
We usually, our kind of golden rule has always been to try to team it up with an event wherever IFPA is being held. Can we make it a weekend after some other big event in wherever we're going? And so we haven't talked about that we haven't talked to the German group in a while, but they ran IFPA 10 for us. It's the same group. So I always try to lobby for making EPC the weekend before IFPA. So I will probably be lobbying pretty hard to my country director friends of like, why don't you guys have Germany host the EPC in 2023? Because I'd love to go. We did that in London. We did EPC and IFPA back-to-back weekends, and a bunch of Americans got to play in an EPC, see London, and then play in IFPA and head home.
See, that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so then I would assume, so qualifying for that then would run through, what would it be, like December 31st of 22. Okay. Just making sure. And that's like, I'm asking for me because I want to go.
There's a lot of people asking for you, man.
I know.
This is why I have to get my District 82 on, because I'm not running shit if I'm not playing in it. You think I'm going to go fly to Germany to sit in a chair all weekend? You're out of your mind.
I think you'll be good. You're ranked what, like 44th right now? And that's you're usually top 30, aren't you? Pretty consistent.
There's kind of a level. I mean, pre-kids there was a level, then there was kind of a post-kids plateauing, and yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, I can remember when I dropped off the front page, and that was a sad day. And it'd be nice to chase back up there a little bit.
I think you'll get back up there before Teolis gets up there the first time.
Oh, well, that's for sure, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
you'll be good. You'll be fine. So then we got IFPA out of the way. When do you expect SPC tournaments to start back up? Just next year, 2022, just starting in January.
Qualifying, and then the next Oklahoma State Championship will be January of 23.
Okay, so this is all making sense. And then the SPC, I believe it would have been the 2020 Circuit Championship. What does that move to now?
So we haven't played the 2019 final yet.
Or yeah, the 2019.
Final, those 20 people are done. We just haven't played it yet. We are figuring that out now. For hopefully before the end of the calendar year, we will find a way to get those 20 people in a room, get this thing done with, and get it over. The 2020 season has now become the 2020/2021/2022 season. And our rule is if the event has already happened, it counts. So that would be the Open at Indisc and Pin Masters are the only two that count, because Texas just missed. That's when the world ended,
right?
TPF got canceled.
Right.
So those two are done. The other 18 events, or what's left of them, let me pour some out for Pinberg. So
yeah.
So the other 17 events that now remain will be held in 2022. And that includes even for events that can be held in 2021. So like Expo, for example, like Expo will be held in October of this year. That will not count for the circuit. Expo's 22 event will count towards the circuit.
Okay, but the Open and Pin Masters count.
And so when those get run next year in 2022, neither of those will count for the circuit because the 2020 events already did.
Okay, so that's
so
actually
no double dipping there. I know
no double dipping.
Carl wasn't pleased with that decision, but too bad.
Yeah, well, I will tell you right now, I'll just kiss your ass and say I think it's a great decision because I did halfway decent.
There you go. Me too, man. Why do you think we made the decision we made? I played all right. Give me those points, man.
Okay, so now for all the listeners out there, now you guys know if you played in the Open back in 2020, January 2020, or Pin Masters of March 2020, those points do carry over and do count for this upcoming season's Stern Pro Circuit, which is starting in 2022.
Correct.
Okay. It's a mouthful, but hey, we got it all out. So that's
know what? It's gonna work, and 5 years from now it will be something that we dealt with 5 years ago, and it'll be done.
Exactly. You just got to get through it now and get these tournaments going, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Well, Josh, I appreciate your time, man. I'm glad to finally get you on here after about a year of going back and forth and trying to
man,
find a good time. But I say a good time. It's totally my fault. You were great. You definitely you were very accessible. Much better than Tom Graff, who's not accessible at all. So thank you. I appreciate it. And we'll have to have you come on our
You'll have to ask him about the tournament ruling that caused him to quit being a state rep.
He's told me that story.
I don't know if you guys have talked about that on air, but that'd be a fun one.
We haven't taled about it on air. We might wait until you come on and then we'll talk about it.
Tom will be sick that day or doing someone's filling at work. Sorry, guys, can't make it. You're doing a filling at like 10 at night? Like, yeah.
Yep, that's Tom Graff for you. Well, I appreciate it. Do you have anything you want to plug? I don't know if you have anything to plug. I mean, IFPA?
No.
All Thrills?
No,
you're good.
We're good, man. We're good.
Yeah. You have anything to say to Teolis before we go off air?
No, he's not worth words. Although I'm sure he's gonna be like, he called me earlier this week, and I was like, oh yeah, he wants to have me on before August 1st, and I'm like, and he usually tells me if I have anything planned, and we didn't even get to that, but I was gonna be like, yeah, we can do a show before August 1st. Yeah, I'm going on with Travis later this week, and then I'm sure he'd like mute. Oh, that get in the scoop. Get in
the scoop. Hey, we got done what we needed to get done. All the information's out there, and everybody can.
You did Jeff's job. You saved me a Jeff conversation, man. I'm just going to divert him to like, just go listen to the pod, man. It's all there.
Hey, that's what I'm here for.
Record your pinball profile as our conversation that we're just having now, and just air that on his channel. Cross marketing. You can get all of his listeners for you.
I'm sure he'll love that, and his mullet. So yeah. All right. Take care, Josh. I appreciate it, brother.
Have a good one.